Thank you for coming back to the Tony Montana channel. Today we bring you another sweet piece of history written by a controversial individual in the fraternity but nonetheless, an intelligent and knowledgeable person. The following was written by California Jack in his 2007 tips book. This audio was for preservation of pit bull history and recognizing individuals within the fraternity that made an impact on the breed. Remember to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Without further ado, let's begin the audio. The 5 Keys to Success. Before I get into the deeper subjects of schooling, testing, and conditioning, I want you to keep in mind throughout this book that there is a whole lot more to long-term success in these dogs than winning a show or in stumbling upon a proven producer. True success in these dogs has to do with a person being able to take the excellent dogs he acquires, to keep them alive first of all, and you will be surprised at how many imbeciles can't even do that, but after that the successful Deckman learns to be able to perpetuate that original excellence indefinitely. This means that the successful Deckman will have super winning dogs 25 years down the road, all in a bit down from the original stock he started with. This seems simple enough, but in fact it is not. Like playing tennis on an elite level, or performing well at anything on an elite level, perpetuating canine excellence on an elite level requires a bountiful complexity of natural aptitudes, learned skills, and acquired savvy on all aspects of your Deckmanship. And the truth is, most Deckmen are incompetent in all aspects of their Deckmanship. Most Deckmen can't think beyond today. They don't feed well, they don't school properly, they test their dogs either too hard, too young, or both, and I would venture to guess that if you placed a truly great dog with 99% of any randomly selected so-called Deckman, that this person would drop the torch he was passed, and that he would have cared at #up a wet dream. And this person would continue to fail in some aspect of his job as a caregiver every time he was passed a new torch. And by this I mean most people manage to mess up their excellent dogs, or they lose them altogether, which forces them to start over again looking for another excellent dog. Regardless of how superb the dog is that they get, or how well bred, when most people get their hands on a good dog they invariably manage to fumble the ball at some ping, and they will ultimately lose their good dog and all of the superb genetics behind him. And, sadly, the average Deckman will commit this stupidity within the first 1 to 2 years of acquiring that good animal, and they will do this repeatedly with every new good one they gets their hands on. Most Deckmen are simply incompetent fumblers of all that they get their hands on. Sure, we all have fumbled the ball at some point, that is part of learning, but only a very few Deckmen seem to be able to regroup to the point where they get it, and from that moment forward to set themselves up to score consistent touchdowns with what they get their hands on. The vast majority of Deckmen will forever drop the ball, and fall flat on their face, each and every time they get a new good dog. If you think I am exaggerating, then really take a good look at most Deckmen, and analyze the fate of every good dog they acquired, how long they were able to hang on to that good dog, and what kind of perpetual breeding management they were able to do with that dog to perpetuate that good dog's genetics. Did the dog go all their way? If so, or if not, were these people able to establish a bloodline with their good dog? How long were they even able to keep that good dog alive? These are tough questions, cutting questions, but the answers will serve to slash a clear and dividing line between who has succeeded and who has failed in their overall concern, competence, and management of their good animals. In fact, really take a good look at yourself as a Deckman and answer these same questions along the way. Analyze the fate of every good dog you have acquired, how long you were able to hang on to it, what really in fact you did with your good dogs, and see if anything truly lasting has happened to them, thanks to you and your actions. Because, if you pay attention, you will see that most Deckmen simply cannot maintain the excellence they acquire, they lose the excellence they were blessed with, more often than not, and or they fail to manage their good dog's gene pool more often than not, and if you are real with yourself you will ultimately see that almost every Deckman you know, including that guy in your mirror, is forever starting over again with new stock because of this consistent fumbling and inability to hang on to the ball. And there's a reason for this. That reason is because most Deckmen simply cannot make effective decisions with their dogs, on any level, as said decisions relate to proper management of their acquired animals from a long-term perspective. Now then, if you to know anyone who has kept his excellent dogs alive for a number of years, and who has managed to keep that genetic excellence going for a number of years, why don't you know of a successful Deckman, don't you? You see, even where a lesser Deckman happens to stumble upon a super individual dog, and or a super individual producer, remember that momentarily stumbling upon canine excellence isn't where it's at. Stumbling about is still a mark of blindness, even when a person briefly stumbles upon success. That person, because he has no true competence, will just as quickly stumble right back out of his fleeting success. The truth is, any fool can stumble upon canine excellence, and some people are even financially able to go out purchase canine excellence, but very few people are able to create canine excellence, and fewer still are able to perpetuate the excellence they get indefinitely. In order for a person to get himself to a point where he not only has an excellent dog right now, but to where he can maintain that level of excellence indefinitely for future generations, that person must develop 5 key characteristics within himself as an individual deadman. Carefully analyze yourself and your friends to see how many, if any, of the following critical traits you and they have. 1. He must genuinely love his dogs. The number 1 key to success in dogs, or in anything in life, is loving your vocation with a sincere passion. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this sport who like to watch their dogs go, but these people do not actually love their dogs at all as individuals. Nor do they love the bloodline that they come from. Most people in these dogs are incapable of love, and they have no loyalty to their dogs or to their bloodline. They have no devotion, no dedication, no passion. Most people in these dogs are simply mindless idiots who want to see 2 dogs hunt. In fact, some people in this sport don't even like dogs at all. They won't pet their dogs, and they could really give a rat's ass about their dogs in any way whatsoever. Their only reason for having dogs is insofar as whether or not the dogs can hunt. Good people like this are invariably dog wasters who will never, ever be successful in dogs, long term. In order to be successful with his dogs, a person has to have a deep understanding of his dogs. And in order to have the deep understanding of his dogs, a person has to first be able to identify with his dogs, and in order to identify with his dogs, a person must genuinely love his dogs, truly, both as individuals and as a whole bloodline and family. A person must be able to put himself in his dog's position. He must be thoughtful and able to see things as his dogs see things. He must try to understand his dogs as deeply as possible, in order to be able to make the correct decisions with them, on all levels, and a person cannot ever achieve this kind of understanding and connection with his animals unless he genuinely loves them. Period. How can a person instinctively know if a dog is ready for a hard hunt without having a deep understanding of the dog as an individual? And how can a person have a deep understanding of that individual dog, unless he has a deep connection with that individual? And how can a person have a deep connection with an individual, unless he has a deep love and appreciation for that individual? He can't. Unfortunately, most people only look at their dogs as acquired objects to test and as acquired objects to use and or as acquired objects to bet, and dogs are mere objects to most people, nothing more. They do not view their dogs as living, breathing individual creatures of the person's own design and creation. Most eggmen view their dogs simply as objects to buy and to go through. That is all an entire yard of dogs is to most people. Objects they bought and must go through, objects they intend to use, objects they want to bet on, and these kind of people will never, ever have the clue of true and complete deadming. Never in a million years will they come to understand their dogs. Never in a million years will they ever be dedicated to their dogs. And that is because they never, ever legitimately loved their dogs or invested themselves into their dogs. Have you ever heard the saying, nothing ventured, nothing gained? If you do not venture and invest your love into these animals, you will never gain legitimate success with them, nor lasting success. It is simply impossible. To show the reverse of what I mean, I met a young wannabe deadman recently, who bought a dog from a friend of mine, and I asked this guy if he liked his new animal, and he told me, "I'll like him when he proves himself to me." His was your typical hard-ass, tough guy mindset that you run into in these dogs, and yet I was still simply amazed. The dog he had was a perfect specimen. He was beautifully colored, well-structured, and superbly bred. The dog was also wonderfully tempered and even very obedient. Basically, the dog was a fine example of the breed that any true connoisseur of fine dogs would love to have and behold, and yet this fool who had him saw nothing positive in this young dog, simply because he hadn't been tested yet. This young person could appreciate nothing about his beautiful, young animal. Folks, these dogs are not stupid. At least superior dogs are not stupid, and intelligent dogs know when they are with a friend, and intelligent superior dogs know when they are with an enemy. They know when they are genuinely loved by their owners, and they know when they are unappreciated, abused, and neglected. Your belief in this regard doesn't matter. The fact is, an intelligent dog knows in his bones when his master is truly his friend or not, just as you know in your bones whether a person you are with is truly your friend or not. Any intelligent creature has this sort of sixth sense about him. Therefore this young fool had his entire view of dogs and his role as their caregiver exactly backwards. This young man expected his young dog to prove himself to him, before the young man was willing to make the commitment to love the dog in return. Had this person any clue about the proper order of things, he would realize that he needs to give to the dog, on every nurturing level, before he has a right to expect from the dog at the highest performance level. Genuine love for a dog not only is a necessary part of one's own dedication as a dogman, but such a bonding experience is part of the developmental process of a dog's excellence. Let me say that in a different way. Developing a legitimate bond with an owner is part of the complete evolution of a young dog's developmental process into a world-class professional athlete. Therefore, to withhold giving love to a dog while he is developing is to withhold part of the necessary fertilizer that is required for his optimal and complete maturation as a performance animal for you. Believe it. Yes, it takes a lot out of a person to put that kind of devotion on the table first, for every dog that he has, but if you are not willing to put that kind of investment into your dogs first, then how can you expect your dogs to go all the way for you in return, when you have not provided for all of their needs first? In short, how can you expect to reap where you have not one? Folks, these dogs have a tougher job than we do, and they have the harder road to hoe, so you owe it to them to give them your all before you can expect them to give their all for you. Because if you have not built your dogs up with genuine love, which includes the best food, nutrition, care, bonding and affection possible, then how can you possibly expect your dogs to reach an elite level when you have not bothered to raise them with elite caregiving? I could write 50 pages on this subject alone, but the bottom line is in order to succeed in dogs, long term, a dogman must plainly and simply love his dogs, and love them for real, which is shown by loving actions and loving practices, and an unswerving dedication to their well-being. Sincere love is expressed in many ways. It is expressed by a deep compassion for each individual dog, yes, but it is also expressed by an intense desire and curiosity to learn more and more about dogs in general, canine health, canine upkeep, canine medicine, etc. For instance, most people in this game have several dogs on their yard, but yet they do not have one single book on veterinary medicine or dog care. Most people in this game have, say, 15 dogs, but yet they will not have one single proper chain set up to restrain their animals. Their whole yard is an hybrid setup of shit hardware, and such people lack the curiosity or concern to learn how to chain and kennel a dog properly. Basically, too many bottom-dwelling dogmen buy up a bunch of dogs, and then they keep them in crates, or in mud, or on 3-foot chains, or in shit and filth, feeding them the least expensive food they can get away with feeding, or all of these things put together, without having one single book or scrap of paper containing even the slightest tidbit of knowledge on proper care, proper nutrition, proper husbandry, etc. How can you love an animal and yet keep him in filth? How can you love an animal and yet keep him on a 3-foot chain? How can you be considerate of your animal's needs, without the slightest will to crack open a book and gain even drop of knowledge on proper care, proper nutrition, proper husbandry, etc.? How can you love a dog that you won't even pet or take the time to bond with? For instance, I have seen many people enroll in the Poncho board, but who never bother to sign up on my health and welfare board. How can this be? It's easy. Again, too many people only care about their dog hunting, but yet they could care less about their dogs in general. There is no other explanation. People, the bottom line is this. If you do not love your dogs, you will never succeed in dogs for the long haul, and the only way to show a legitimate love for something is to care for it, always, and on every level possible. Kenneling, nutritionally, medically, and emotionally via a legitimate bonding experience. Basically, you need an instinctive desire to do your best for your dogs. Anything less than this heartfelt continual effort for your dogs is just being a half-ass, and the sad fact is this sport is chock full of half-assed dogmen who ultimately don't give a shit about their animals, individually, as a family, or in any other way. 2. He must abide by nature's laws. The successful dogman realizes there are certain laws of nature that must be abided by in order to achieve the best results. The maturation process is one of these laws. The ability to reap only after one is one is another of these laws. The fact that the best nutrition yields the best health and performance results is another one of these laws. And yet the vast majority of dogmen flounder in failure precisely because they refuse to obey, follow, or even pay attention to the decree of these natural laws. How can you judge a dog who is not yet mature? How can you have a carnivore under your care, and then feed him a diet he was not designed to eat, and then scratch your head as to why the dog is not performing at an optimal level? How can you criticize the animal for a breakdown when he has not been provided with the correct fuel required for his optimal health? I mean, there are basic laws of nature that must be abided by in order for a person to be successful, and the successful dogman follows these laws to his benefit, while the failure in dogs violates these laws to his detriment. As I will be suggesting in my schooling chapter next, if we speak about the subject of farming crops, any idiot can clearly see that there is a natural process that must be followed in order to yield consistently good harvests of crops. Quality seeds must be planted. Quality nurturing must be given. Sufficient time to mature and ripen must be allowed for. And only then, after we have allowed the natural processes to develop and unfold, after we have paid the price and won the work, do we then have arrived to expect to reap a bountiful harvest from our efforts, after the passage of the required time and after the giving of the required effort. Again, this is called the law of the farm: you reap what you sow. Yet every day we see dwarves in these ducks, who will not sow anything into their ducks, and who yet wonder why they cannot reap consistent success with their animals. These fools violate nature's laws as a matter of daily routine, and they do this by trying to take every conceivable shortcut they can think of. They school too young, they test too young, they feed pure shit, they kennel with poor setups, they do not control parasites, they school their dogs too little or with no method, and thus don't give them enough valuable experience, etc., etc. And by attempting to take these shortcuts, such imbeciles will always fail, because the truth of the matter is there are no shortcuts to success. Success is achieved only by following all of nature's laws, one step at a time. You must be willing to go through the process. You must be willing to follow nature's laws, step by step, and you must see to have nature's laws work for you, not against you. Because, folks, there really are laws of nature out there, whether you think so or not, and if you wish to succeed on a large scale you will obey these laws of nature, you will never violate them. Really, the laws of nature must become a religion for you. You must see to both understand and to obey nature's laws, as a matter of daily habit, because when you do so, you will suddenly achieve a spiritual awareness that few deckmen will ever have. You will gain the proverbial aha. As you gain penetrating insight into the whole scheme of things as they relate to your dog's developmental processes. Again, these natural laws will ultimately become your religion as a deckman, if you wish to succeed in ducks, long term. As William James once said, spirituality is the attempt to align oneself with an unseen order of things, and there is an unseen order of things to deckmanship, to the processes and phases that all dogs must go through before they reach an ultimate maturity. And you must align yourself and your thinking with this order of things, not against these processes, if you want to be consistently successful. You must simply accept the fact that there are natural processes that must be allowed to develop and unfold, in flowing sequence, in order for you to reap a successful harvest. The maturity process. The schooling process. The continual process of trying to maintain optimal health, etc. Again, I could go on for 50 pages or more here, but the bottom line is, in order to succeed in these ducks, you must obey nature's laws and not violate them. Because there is also another saying, you can never break the laws, you can only break yourself against the law. Sadly, in our case, what most idiot deckmen break is their dogs against these laws. Therefore, the truly wise, mature, and successful deckman is always trying to make these natural laws work for his dogs and not against his dogs. If you are enjoying this audio video, please do press the like button and subscribe to the Tony Montana channel to get notified when new videos upload. Now, let us go back to the audio 3. You must understand this dog's job. Another key trait a deckman must have in order to succeed long term is he must truly understand the job for which his canine athletes were bred to perform. For some sports, a person must have a legitimate understanding of combat strategy in general, and he must further have a legitimate understanding of the rules by which these ducks are designed to compete. If we were breeding dogs to win a drop hunt where a dog and a boy were dumped in a pit, with no rules or handling, and where the winner was decided within a 30-minute time limit, we would breed for much different traits from those we are breeding for now. If we were breeding for ducks who had to run a race across the Arctic tundra, for several days running, we again would be selecting and breeding for traits that are entirely different from the traits we are breeding for now in our dogs. Well, in our sport, we are breeding for traits that should maximize a dog's chances for winning a boar hunt that technically has no time limit, but where, in point of fact, 75% of all contests are decided within 45 minutes, and where 98% of all contests are decided in under 2 hours. Trust me, I have done the math and the numbers crunching, and the fact of the matter is 75% of all hunts are over within 45, and 98% of all contests are over by the 2-hour mark. With those numbers in mind, and with the other fact in mind that over 90% of all hunts are won and lost on scratching within these time frame parameters, we must therefore breed dogs that can survive a total war with a wild boar for at least 2 hours, and which dogs are always willing to scratch back at any point in time they are called upon to do so, within the time parameter. Furthermore, our dogs do not have to do this against several boars, but only against one of them, which means that the practice of two-dogging is absolutely pointless and stupid. And yet you will see people breeding their dogs for entirely different purposes than a cage and rules contest. You will see people breed for things like mouth, and you will see people purposely breeding dogs who won't pace themselves at all, and thus who couldn't possibly go 2 hours, just because these energy-wasting barnstormers are impressive in short hunts. You will also see people test their dogs against multiple boars, when the dog only has to face one opponent for his true vocation and job. Basically, you will see most people in these dogs breeding for, testing for, and culling for traits that have nothing to do with their dog's actual job. And these people will invariably be failures as breeders, percentage-wise, precisely because they do not truly understand the job for which they are breeding their dogs. Killing boars quickly is not what we are breeding dogs for, and for that matter it is not usually possible when you are on a real boar. Scratching into 2 or 3 different opponents is not what we are breeding our dogs to do either. What we are trying to do is breed dogs who are athletic, intelligent, and tough enough to nullify and survive anything that happens to them, from one boar, and who will continually scratch back anytime they are asked to do so. That is what we are breeding our dogs for, folks, because that is what a Cajun rules contest is. Therefore, another critical key to long-term success as a dogman is to continually keep the job in mind for which our dogs are intended to compete. Here I make a comment as Tony Montana. Speaking in historical and educational terms, the reason why dogmen of the past used to 2 or 3 dog a dog was because it was under a game test. The intent was to keep constant pressure on the dog to see if it would stop or continue. Some of the dogs that were tested were exceptionally skilled, that more dogs were needed to get to the right amount of pressure required for a game test. Now, let's go back to the audio. 4. He must view his dogs as valuable resources. The other critical trait a dogman must have for long-term success is he must view all of his dogs as valuable resources. When a particular individual dog expresses the epitome of all that we are striving for, the successful dogman will make it his business to preserve and cultivate that dog's genetics as the most valuable resource there is. This is how every single excellent family of dogs has come into existence, and it is where some superior dogman recognized and valued some individual dog's excellence, and then that dogman made it his business to cultivate those superior genetics as a valuable resource, and the only way to do this is by developing a line breeding program around a great dog. Hemphill did it with Geronimo. Carver did it with Black Widow and Ironhead. Boudreaux did it with Blind Billy and Eli. Tudor did it with Deborah and Spike. Patrick did it with Bolio and Tombstone. Crenshaw did it with Rascal and Honeybunch. Garrett did it with Jeep. Chavez did it with Yellow John. Boyles did it with Dirty Mary. Garner did it with Chinaman and Spike. Hollingsworth did it with Lady in Red. California Jack did it with Poncho and Coca-Cola. Victor did it with Mayday. Cuban Missing Link did it with Little John, etc., etc. Wherever you find long-term success in dogs, you will find a dogman who has sought to preserve and cultivate the genes of some dog, or dogs, that he found to be excellent, defining animals to him. You see, where most idiot dogmen want to waste their excellent dogs, and get them killed eventually, the truly long-term success in dogs tries to actively cultivate and preserve excellence when he sees it. Where most idiot dogmen view dogs as expendable items to use up and go through, the truly successful dogman views his animals as valuable resources to preserve and cherish. Most people always fail to plan for the future. Most people are consumers and not producers. Most people use up their resources. They do not perpetually create their own resources. Well, the long-term successful dogman is always a producer, not a waster. He sees his best dogs as valuable resources to preserve and maintain, rather than as toys to play with, abuse, and waste. The bottom line is, in order to be successful for the long haul, you must do everything in your power to preserve the excellence you are blessed with, and not to waste it. And every successful dogman, who has turned out quality animals year after year, follows this credo to the very best of his ability. The truly superior dogman is a preserver and a creator of excellence at heart, and not a waster and abuser of excellence at heart. Number 5. He must effectively manage the intangibles. Finally, foundational to all of the above, a truly successful dogman makes it his business to manage all of the intangibles in his dog's favor and not against his dogs. Yes, a dog needs superior genetics to be able to reach the highest level, but he also needs the intangibles stacked in his favor, and not against him, in order to have his best chances of success. Let me give you an example below of how important managing the intangibles are, by telling yet another tragedy of someone who has managed all of the intangibles against his own great dog. I know of a superb dog bred by a friend of mine, who lost recently, and which dog in fact quit in his loss. This dog is being mindlessly called a cur by the primitive apes who own him, but in point of fact he was a great animal who had every single intangible stacked against him. Here is the background. This dog was schooled for over 30 minutes, on 8 separate occasions, before he was even 17 months old. He was basically skull-drugged repeatedly before the age where he should have even been bumped. On top of the stupidity, he was then hunted after these hard sessions, at 17 months of age, and his owner made sure this dog had to push 3 lbs of weight in this hunt, and yet this young dog miraculously pulled it off in 1:127. 2 weeks later, not fully recovered, this young dog was hunted low TC into a killer for 40, again pushing 2 lb of weight, and yet this tough young dog again managed to win on exceptional gymnast and savvy. This young animal was now just over 18 months old, which is when he should have just started his schooling. Yet he had already been skull-drug all the way out, on 8 separate occasions, and now he had also just finished being put through 2 back-to-back OTC hunts acid on top of this, that totaled around an hour apiece. But the stupidity didn't end there, folks. 2 weeks later, again after the second OTC hunt, this young dog, still recovering from the previous deals, and now with a fractured leg, was again hunted, pus oozing out of his infected wounds too, and this time he had to spot 4 lb of weight, into a pretty damn good boarded boot. This young beat-up dog tried every trick in the book, despite how sore and worn out he was, but finally all he could do was hang on to the bottom jaw just to try and stay out of trouble, but at the end of the day he got beat the F-cat pound up. Eventually, and tragically, this poor young dog got his whole face ripped off by the bigger boy's tusks, and he finally quit in 1 hour 10, to a no-win situation, hopelessly outsized, and with every single card in the deck stacked against him by his criminally stupid, 8-brained owners. Unbelievably, this fantastic young dog was called a cur by all in attendance, including his owners, who did not have enough sense to consider all of the mismanaged intangibles that were decisively stacked against this dog's chances of winning, and if you can believe it, they called this dog as unworthy of being on their yard. In actuality, when analyzed by anyone with an ounce of horse sense, this young dog was in fact a super animal, who was dealt another shitty hand by being placed in yet another ignorant mother-cat pounder's care. It wasn't the dog who was unworthy of these people. These people were in fact unworthy of this dog. Because, as good as this young dog was genetically, he simply could not overcome the enormous pile of intangibles that were stacked against him. This potentially great dog was simply placed in the hands of a helplessly stupid son of a bitch, who stacked every single intangible against his dog, rather than in his dog's favor. Folks, all the good genetics in the world will not overcome your ownership stupidity. All of the good genetics in the world won't overcome being rushed too soon, they won't overcome spotting too much weight, nor will good genetics overcome not being able to recover sufficiently from the previous hunt. Good genetics simply won't overcome layer upon layer of ownership stupidity, nor will good genetics overcome an entire deck of cards being stacked against a dog. Because at the end of the day, good genetics must be married with good management of the intangibles in order for a dog to reach his full potential. Just as bad management will bring out the worst in a good dog, good management will bring out the best in even an average dog. But, more importantly, good management will bring out the glory in a truly great dog. And the only way in which a person can be a good manager is to stack all of the intangibles in his dog's favor, not against his dog. There is no other way to enjoy consistent success in these dogs than by making sure that all of the intangibles are working for your dog and not against your dog. You must make sure that you manage the intangibles, layer upon layer, to be favorable to your dog, rather than stacking them, layer upon layer, to be against your dog. Effectively managing the intangibles is something that is absolutely critical in order for you to achieve consistent success as a deckman, because effectively managing the intangibles is what separates a good deckman from a bad deckman. Even when you do breedings, this applies. For instance, making sure the stud semen is viable, and then making sure that the bitch is actually in fertile estrus within her heat cycle, before you actually breed, will yield much better results than will just breeding an unchecked male over a bitch on her 12th day. That former management effort shows that the breeder has stopped the intangibles in his breeding favor, by having a semen evaluation done on the stud first, as well as by having a progesterone check of the bitch first, while the latter management effort has failed to do any of this and is basically swinging in the dark, assuming the male is fertile and the bitch is ovulating. Repeated over time, the former deckman will be the much more successful breeder. And, if you look at your failures in the dogs honestly, you will see that MI's management of the intangibles was the cause every single one of them. I know this, because mismanaging the intangible has been the cause of all of my failures. When you hunt a dog, making sure that your entry is fully mature, is well schooled, is in optimal health, is free of parasites, is in pit condition, is at his best weight, and has been fed an outstanding complement of good food and supplements, is stacking every layer of intangibles in your dog's favor. By contrast, bringing in a 16-month-old pup, full of worms, yanked right off the chain, spotting 2 lb of weight, after being fed a steady diet of old Roy, is stacking every layer of intangibles against your dog's chances of winning. And yet there are idiots who practice this latter kind of stupidity on every single hunt of their foolish and unsuccessful dog careers. Folks, the best genetics in the world won't overcome your stupidity as an owner. There are many deckmen who would have lost with GRCH Buck or GRCH Yellow. Genetics are important, but your managing the intangibles in your dog's favor is even more important. There are many people in these dogs who will take a good animal, genetically, and then through an odyssey of their own incredible stupidity as owners, they will reduce that animal's chances of winning, step by step, by mismanaging the intangibles, step by step, every step of the way. A good deckman is simply one who manages every intangible effectively to be in his dog's favor, and a stupid deckman is one who manages every intangible effectively to be against his dog's best chances. It really is that simple. Always remember, it is your dog's job to be good in game, yes, but it is your job to manage the good dog with competence and wisdom, and not with incompetence and stupidity. The deadmen who succeed long-term, and on a large scale, are those deadmen who consistently manage the intangibles effectively, to be in their dog's favor, while all of the habitual failures in these dogs are perpetually mismanaging the intangibles and stacking every single hidden factor against their dog's chances at success. Such idiots will always be spotting weight, spotting age, they will pull dogs off the chain, they will skull drag their dogs either too hard or too young, they will feed lousy feed, they will not control parasites, etc., etc., etc. The bottom line is this. If you want to be a good and successful deckman, long-term, you will always and forever make it your business to manage the intangibles, to be with your dogs and not against your dogs. Conclusion: I hope my efforts at writing all of this do not go unnoticed. I hope that some of you found yourselves nodding your heads at the power of these 5 key traits that cut a deep gash and defining line between the successful and the unsuccessful in these dogs. We all have violated one, or all, of these 5 key traits, at one point or another, and thus we have all failed at one point or another. That is not the lesson here. Failing in the past is not the mark of an ultimate failure, but continuously failing is. Some of the most successful people in every walk of life started out as total failures, but through renewed effort and renewed practices, they slowly but surely gained success for themselves, one step at a time. Failed practices will always yield failed results. And one definition of insanity is to continue to do the same things and yet to expect different results. But the true success in dogs is not content with failure, and the true success is always striving to do better. Therefore, if you want to achieve better results, then you have to habitually employ better practices. This article here defines those better practices. If you are already living up to every single one of these principles, then you already are a successful deadman. Success can't help but come from these practices. If you live up to none of these practices, then you are a total failure as a deadman. Failure can't help but come from violation of these practices. If you have not been succeeding so far in these dogs, but if you have a sincere desire to do well and to be successful, that is, if you have the number 1 key trait, which is a sincere love of these dogs, then getting the other 4 elements in order will spell your eventual success in dogs. If this audio helps even one person use his number 1 trait more effectively, to motivate him to see the other 4 traits more clearly and to then follow these traits with clearer vision and perspective, then I will have done my job as a writer and I will have passed the torch to another willing and capable runner. And in so doing I will have benefited another yard of dogs somewhere, and as such I will be very content that I have done my job. I hope you have enjoyed this educational audio and have pressed the like button. Your likes helps YouTube recommend this video to the world. To subscribe and press on the notification bell to get noticed when new videos are published. This is Tony Montana. Until next time.